Vivian stood before the mirror, critically examining her reflection. At 50, she looked remarkable. Her figure was slender, her face well maintained, and her hair elegantly styled. Only her eyes betrayed the inner turmoil that had plagued her for the past 2 years, ever since a woman had entered her only son's life. Just tonight, he was supposed to visit her with his family, and Vivian and her friend went to make dinner. She mechanically gathered the ingredients for the pie, her mind elsewhere. She recalled the day 2 years ago when Dennis had surprised her with news of his upcoming wedding. That was when she first met Wren, a delicate blonde with a guarded gaze. Something about her seemed insincere. Her answers too perfect, her smiles too rehearsed. And 3 months later, they were married. Soon after, Wren was pregnant. Vivian remembered trying to subtly ask Dennis about his bride's past, but he brushed her off. "Mum, what does it matter? The present is what counts." Yet he used to share everything with her, introducing her to every girlfriend and seeking her advice. But now it was over. The dough stubbornly refused to rise, as if sharing Vivian's anxiety. Outside, a light drizzle tapped against the window, mirroring her gloomy thoughts. When Megan was born, everyone admired the charming baby, but Vivian's heart resisted the joy. The granddaughter was sweet, but Vivian felt like she was a stranger. Nothing about her, from her light brown hair to the way she wrinkled her nose, resembled their family. Genes can skip generations, Vivian told herself, but an inner voice persisted. "Look closer." She pored over family photos, searching for similarities, but found none. Even the girl's temperament was different, calm and contemplative, unlike the fiery nature of their family. The doorbell rang, startling her. Serafina, her neighbour and only friend who dared to speak the truth, stood at the door. "I'm here for some salt," Serafina smiled, looking intently at Vivian. "What's on your mind? Still tormenting yourself with suspicions?" "Look at yourself," Serafina said, stirring her tea a few minutes later. "Your eyes are dull, and you've got wrinkles, all because of these fantasies." Vivian placed a freshly baked pie in front of her friend. "What fantasies, Serafina? Have you seen my so-called granddaughter? Not a single family trait. And Wren, do you know what I found out?" "Spying again," Serafina sighed. "Not spying, just curious. She lived in another city before Dennis, and there's something shady about her past. No friends, no relatives at the wedding, just some strange aunt." "Vivian, stop," Serafina said, putting down her fork. "You're making yourself miserable. Dennis is happy, and their girl is growing up." "Happiness, Serafina. It's all a lie. You'll see, I'll prove it. There are clinics that do tests. Why not? I'll take a sample of hair or saliva, and everything will be clear." "You're crazy. That's illegal." "Nonsense, I'm a grandmother. I have the right to know." "What about trust? Human relationships?" "What relationships, Serafina? She's a stranger. I can feel it in my gut. Something's not right here." Serafina finished her tea in silence and stood up. "Do what you must, but remember, sometimes the truth destroys more than lies." Vivian saw her friend out and returned to the kitchen. A plan had already formed in her mind, so without postponing, she dialed the medical centre. "Good day. I'm inquiring about a DNA test. Can you determine kinship between a grandmother and granddaughter?" A friendly voice on the other end explained the details. The cost was steep, but how could she put a price on the truth? "Just don't tell anyone," Vivian began. "Don't worry," the woman chuckled. "We're used to confidentiality. We often get mothers-in-law calling." That remark stung unexpectedly and unpleasantly, and Vivian hurried to explain herself. "I'm not just a mother-in-law. I'm a mother protecting her son from deception." That evening, Dennis arrived with his family. Vivian watched her granddaughter surreptitiously, her heart aching more with each glance. No, she definitely needed to find out the truth. The medical centre was housed in an old mansion with columns. Vivian adjusted her silk scarf and pushed open the heavy door. Inside, the scent of antiseptic and expensive perfume filled the air. In the office, a young nurse with a piercing gaze greeted her. "Did you bring the sample?" she asked, and Vivian produced a carefully packed bag containing a few strands of hair and a saliva sample she had discreetly collected from her granddaughter's cup the day before. "You know," the nurse said, looking at her over her glasses, "in 3 years of working here, I've seen it all. Sometimes the results destroy families." "I need to know the truth," Vivian replied firmly. "The results will be ready in a week. And remember, this is an unofficial test. It has no legal standing." The week dragged on endlessly. Vivian lost weight, slept poorly, and even her favourite TV shows couldn't distract her from thoughts of the impending result. Dennis visited twice, once with his family. Watching her son happily play with Megan, the woman almost abandoned her plan. Then she noticed those alien features in her granddaughter's face again. Wren remained as distant as ever. "Probably she feels my suspicions," Vivian thought, stealing glances at her daughter-in-law. Finally, the decisive day arrived. The envelope with the results burned her hands. Vivian couldn't bring herself to open it at the centre. She went to a park and sat on a bench. Her fingers trembled as she tore open the thick paper. The lines danced before her eyes, but she saw the crucial part clearly. The probability of kinship was extremely low. "I knew it!" she cried triumphantly, startling the cats, warming on the sun nearby. A few passers-by turned to look, but Vivian didn't care. Grabbing her purse, she hurried to her son. She had to open his eyes immediately. The taxi sped through the streets as fragments of thoughts raced through her mind. How would he react? Would he forgive her interference? But didn't he deserve to know the truth? Dennis's office was in a modern business centre. The security guard recognised Vivian and nodded respectfully. She rushed past him, her heels clicking on the marble floor. The secretary tried to say something, but Vivian was already pushing open the office door. Dennis was on the phone, his eyebrows rising in surprise at the sight of his mother. "I'll call back," he said into the receiver. "What happened, Mum? You look terrible." "Here." Vivian placed the envelope on the desk. Her hands were shaking, her voice breaking. "Open it and read." Dennis slowly took the envelope. His face remained impassive, but the tension in his jaw was evident. "I have a feeling I know what this is." He turned the envelope over in his hands. "A DNA test?" "Yes, and it confirms that Megan is not your daughter. This woman, your wife, she deceived you." Dennis stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the cityscape stretched out. Grey buildings, sparse trees and people rushing about. "You know, Mum," his voice sounded weary, "I've always been amazed by your ability to destroy everything you touch." "Are you crazy? I'm trying to protect you." "From what? From happiness? From my family? From my beloved wife and daughter?" He turned sharply. "Did you think I didn't know?" Vivian was shocked. Her throat felt dry. "You knew?" "Of course. Wren told me about the pregnancy even before the wedding. It was my choice to be a father to this child." "But why? Why take on someone else's child?" "Someone else's?" Dennis smiled bitterly. "And who decides that, Mum? You, with your tests, or my heart?" A heavy silence hung in the office. Muffled voices and the hum of office equipment could be heard through the door. "I fell in love with Wren at first sight," Dennis finally said. "When she told me about the child, I realized this was a chance to become a real family." They had met at a hospital. He was accompanying a business partner whose wife was having pregnancy complications. Wren was sitting in the corridor looking lost and frightened. Their eyes met, and he simply couldn't walk away. "Did she tell you everything right away?" Vivian struggled to keep her voice steady. "Not right away. At first we just talked. Then started seeing each other. I could see she was hiding something, but I didn't rush her. And when she finally told me the truth about the pregnancy, about the father who had disappeared, you know what? I felt relieved." "Relieved?" Vivian looked at her son in disbelief. "Yes, because she trusted me. She didn't try to deceive me or pass the child off as mine. She was ready to be alone, but I offered to be a family." Rain began to fall outside, tapping against the window, creating intricate patterns. "And what about your own children? Don't you want—" "Mum." Dennis kneeled beside her and took her hands. "Megan is my child. By documents, by love, by everything that truly matters. And if we have our own children, that will be wonderful too." "But I had the right to know," said Vivian, at her last attempt at self-defence. "No, Mum, this was our decision. Only ours. And now we have two choices." His voice hardened. "Either you accept my family as it is, or—" Dennis spoke calmly, methodically tearing the envelope into small pieces that fell to the floor like autumn leaves. His voice was steady, but his eyes held determination. He knew this conversation was inevitable, and he prepared for any outcome. "Or you make a scene, tear your hair out, try to manipulate, and will never see me with my family at your house. Yes, you're my mum, and I will visit you sometimes, but not so often, and always alone." Vivian, sitting opposite him, froze. Her hands, resting on her knees, began to tremble. She looked at her son with disbelief and pain in her eyes. Dennis sat next to her, putting an arm around her shoulders. He could feel her trembling, and it hurt him, but he knew he had to be firm. "Mum, I'm an adult," he said gently. "I don't depend on you. I support my family, and the question of fatherhood, that's my territory, only mine." A year after this conversation, something remarkable happened. The relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law warmed. Wren confessed that she had been burdened by guilt, which had prevented her from being sincere. She feared that Vivian would never accept her, but now, with the truth out, she felt relieved. And another year later, Vivian became a grandmother for the second time. Dennis and Wren had a son. Now, she often remembers Seraphina's wise words. "Before you force the truth on someone, make sure they need it." Vivian understood that sometimes it's better to leave certain things in the past and live in the present, cherishing every moment with her family.